I'm saying I am going to interview documentary filmmaker Ada Trillo today. Ada, can you hear that? It seems like there's a little some kind of feedback.
Hi.
No? Hi, how are you? Thanks so much for making the time. Ada's a documentary photographer who I met some years ago in 2018 in Mexico when we were working together live streaming. And I'm just gonna, next week, I think you're gonna be able to screen share and show videos and images and audio on HAPS TV, but right now you can't. So this is the technology for right now. This is Ada in Mexico live streaming 2018.
Just as bad as when they first entered into Tapachula, which is a shame because when they were in Mexico City, they got access to a lot of support, and here they're not getting this much support by federal government.
Okay, so that's Ada live streaming from TJ, and that was Ada. If you just take us back, that was in 2018. There were 7,000 people at the Benito Juarez Center in Tijuana, and it was very grim. There were a lot of human rights abuses. People from Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, all stuck in there. A lot of women, children, infants, babies. The day I met you and you were doing this live stream, we found out about that they were out of baby formula. So could you tell me about that? And before we go there, though, tell me about who you are and your work as a documentary photographer. How did you start? Where did you start?
Hi. Well, I grew up in the U.S. Mexican border, and I started with my concerns about immigration when Donald Trump started running for office and started demonizing um, immigrants, people trying to come here. My nanny, who was like a second mother to me since I was 4, had been deported from El Paso and started working in our house in Juarez as a housekeeper. And she basically took care of me until I was a senior in high school. And then she died of a stroke. And I never got to say thank you or how grateful I was for her changing my life with her influence. So my work has to do a lot with thanking her and showing that immigrants are great people. They're a great asset to any country, and they're great workers. So I usually work with, like, even if it's a caravan, I'll work with individual people to try to, like, I'll take pictures of a whole, but I'll work also and take pictures of individuals and know their individual stories and try to break it down to bring it to give more humanity to each person.
Right, you're accessing your subjects in a way that not a lot of people do because it's very personal. Where did you start? I know that you spent a lot of time as a kid in, well, you're from El Paso, but in Mexico and Juarez. And what was your first show? How did you jump in? How did you start?
So
Your first,
I grew up in Juarez. I grew up in Juarez until I was a senior in high school. I was born in El Paso, but my home with my parents is still in Juarez, in the Mexican side.
Mhm.
Um, then I went to college, etc. And I did my first photography show on sex workers and bringing them dignity. Especially, Mexico is a very Catholic country, so there's a lot of taboos associated with sex work, a lot of judgment. The project is named "How Did I Get Here?" Many girls here in the border get abducted, trying to go to El Paso, and end up in the brothels. Others choose to be sex workers. Others have had abused families and have nowhere to turn. Different scenarios, but they all deserve dignity. And it was bringing that, giving them that dignity. And one question that I would say is, what would you want to say to somebody that judges you? And so they
Mm.
will more the story. Like, what is it if you had a microphone of all the times that you've been called names or what have you? What would you want to tell those people?
You know, I've seen. this series, this show that you're talking about, and it's in the whole thing's in Juarez, right? And it's so humanizing because what happens as soon as you start to look at those photographs, you have I had an immediate understanding of their humanity. Who are these people? And all of a sudden, it's like, here's the answer to all the questions in one frame. And so I don't know how you do that, but you did that. And my response to it was that it had exactly the desired effect that you're talking about now because I understood them and their humanity. I saw who they were. I got their vulnerability. But some of them were also, hard. And some of them were, just a real reveal about the whole arc of somebody's life that culminated in this frame, sex worker and Juarez and the stigma attached to it. So that was an amazing show. So thank you for that. I actually was on one of your panels in Philly at an art school, but I know last year, and you hung a show in that gallery. It was beautiful. Other shows are these giant, really beautiful black and white prints. And after that, you went to Italy. I know you had a bunch of other shows because I've been following all of them, of course. But what are some of the shows you've had with your last series, and what was your last series?
Well, with my last series, I did two series in 2020, and I haven't shown them anywhere because of COVID.
Hmm.
Actually, no, I showed one in New York. I just showed one as a group show at Agora Gallery in New York. But that was for the Black Lives Matter. But other than that, everything has been completely closed. I had a show scheduled for the new school in New York this summer. It had to be postponed because of COVID, and that was going to be in the caravan. I did the last caravan that came from Honduras all the way to Mexico in 2020 in January.
And
However,
just to qualify that for 1 second, excuse me for interrupting. When Otto's saying the last caravan, she's talking about before the new American policy that was called third safe country or whatever bullshit they came up with that said anybody applying for asylum had to apply in Mexico. If they were doing it here, they all got deported to Guatemala. You ended up with a bunch of unaccompanied minors and other people in Guatemala who were from Honduras and El Salvador and other places and had like no money and no connection. So just to catch up. So yeah, go on.
so that project, I followed them from start to end. We started in San Pedro Sula, Honduras, and then we ended up in Ciudad Hidalgo, Mexico, where they got tear gassed by the Mexican government, shoved into buses, and sent back. They weren't allowed access, like traditionally Mexico has always given access to immigrants trying to traverse its territory for years, even with Peña Nieto, the last president. They were allowed into the Mexican territory, or once they got into the Mexican territory, they were allowed safe passage. But with this one, um, Trump told Amilo Lopez Obrador that if he allowed this caravan in, he was going to increase the Mexican tariffs of goods to go
Hmm.
up. So then the Mexican president sent the National Guard against the migrants to get them out. So, like, and he's supposed to be a socialist president, or
Right.
with such theories. So
He caved.
these poor people suffered like horrible abuses, and they weren't let in. They were sent back. They were sent back. Many asylum seekers that were fearing for their lives will end up getting killed because they had nowhere to go. And Guatemala's too close to Honduras. So if a cartel, not a cartel, a gang is following you, like MS-13, for instance, then they can find you easily in Guatemala. Mexico's a little bit further away where they can actually get asylum, or the United States. But Guatemala or El Salvador, they're too close.
Yeah, what you're talking about and the access to these subjects and the effect of these American policies coming out of the Trump administration, Stephen Miller and third safe country and all this shit that they've been running and has it's what you're just talking about. It's human rights abuses to the point where people are being trafficked and murdered and dying grisly, horrible, hideous deaths. And that's not really. coming through in mainstream media when they're not really seeing that with any regularity. People don't really understand. I don't think that, people understand, yes, there's still children in American detention, ICE detention centers, and there's still, people, children and people who will never connect again, people who will never see their children, children who will never see their parents. But the actual grisly murder and death and the despair and all the things that result from these American policies is what I see in your work all the time. How do you shake this off? You put yourself in a field of profound grief and violence and all of, grief really and death. So when you go back to your home, what do you do to process this?
I
Or
have a woman that helps me. She does like holistic therapy, and she cleanses my energy, my chakras, and that really helps because I do retreats uh, where you just cry and get everything out, and retreats of like 3 days where you're just getting all that, just getting it out, just crying, 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 crying. So then you can heal or try to heal and move on.
what I see in your frames, what I see in your photographs, sometime is so uh, it's really overwhelming because there's a photograph you did, and I wonder if you could tell us about it. And it's the quinceañera photograph. I think this was in a shelter in Juarez, where there's a young woman, and there's all sorts of donations. So everybody's like, making work with what's there. And it's a young woman, and I believe it's her quinceañera, and she put together like an outfit, and it's kind of devastating, but there's joy in the moment, and it's her quinceañera, and she's having it. Could you tell us about that photograph?
Well, it was a beautiful summer, actually, because I spent that whole summer in the migrant shelter in Juarez. Not
Which
only
shelter?
the Juarez, the Casa del Migrante, the migrant shelter of Juarez.
Hmm. Yeah.
And not only do I go with the migrants, but I also teach them photography because they 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 should know a skill. They should know something. Many they don't offer school there, and I don't want to just steal their picture. Just go there and pa, take pictures and not give anything back. So I get with the teens and I get with like the young adults and I teach them. And then I have a lot of friends that are photographers. Many photographers upgrade gear all the time. So their old cameras, sometimes because they're in the field, they don't get any money for it. So I get free cameras to give to the kids in the shelter. To the so
That's what's
that's
coming. Yeah, that's what's coming through in your photographs. That you're not there with a long lens, taking, capturing, stealing. You're actually part of this, and you're not an observer or spectator. You're an active participant with a camera. What is that photograph? Will you tell us about it, where it was taken, and
and this girl was an asylum seeker. They actually got asylum in the U.S. They were one of the few families that got asylum in the U.S. Uh, with this whole thing with Trump because their story was just so horrible. And this poor little 14-year-old they were in the shelter. They had no money for a quinceañera, but that's the dream of a lot of like teenage girls, Hispanic teenage girls, to have their sweet 15, a quinceañera. So we got donations. We got a tailor to make the dress, and we she to her specifications. We got donations for the shoes, which were a little bit bigger, but we got them. We got the mom made the food, but we got donations for the food. So instead of guests, it was all the migrants. So that became the party. All the migrants were dancing. We got donations for somebody to lend speakers. So we put like Central American music there because we couldn't afford a DJ. And it was just such a beautiful moment. There was the priest that came over and did a blessing. Uh, and we just got this with donations from different people. And we just said, this girl has a dream. Let's try to make it come true.
so in the photograph, she's standing there in front of it. It's black and white. She's wearing her dress. She's smiling and she's just beaming. And it's in the middle of, a migrant shelter where you and I both know that that's a lovely shelter and the work they do is great and beautiful. But it's a migrant shelter at the border in Juarez, and it's not a place for certainly like children and young women, but that's who's there. If you're just watching this, I'm talking to documentary photographer Ada Trillo, who I met in Mexico in 2018 during the 2018 October Caravan. Ada's a photographer who's been working in these realms for years. Her work is really compelling and amazing because I believe what she just described, which is that she's not observing, not stealing shots with a long lens, trying to win a prize. She's actually part of the community. She's engaged in that way. So she's not taking photographs. You can see the subjects are offering her the image, and that's very much from my perspective, the discerning element. Ada, tell me about what you're working on now. There, you did a trans series on trans women in Juarez, I think.
Yes, and I want to keep it close right now until I have like this is gonna be a series that's gonna take me some time because I want it to be beautiful and give these women, trans women, a lot of dignity and beauty. Uh, and it's like the edits have to be perfect, so it's gonna take me some time. I'm not gonna show it right away,
Right.
because I want it to really like be something that shows their true beauty.
What was the show you did in at the Arts College in Philadelphia?
That was for the migrant caravan
What
of
was that
2000,
show called?
Chasing Freedom.
Chasing Freedom. And then after that came If Walls Could Talk.
That I did the one if walls could speak or
Walls Could
talk,
Speak.
speak, and that was in St. Joseph's University, and it was the under the remain in Mexico policy of Trump
Right.
and
Remain in Mexico.
how it's affecting asylum seekers primarily, because
Hmm.
there's a difference between those that have a migrant status and those that have asylum seeking status.
Hmm.
Just in law, there's a difference. So, and unfortunately, he's taking the same approach to everybody,
Hmm.
uh, including asylum seekers. And now asylum seekers are in great danger. For instance,
Right. So
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say the Remain in Mexico policy was Stephen Miller's piece of work, and that went into effect when we were there. And when we were there, what happened was there was a lot of unaccompanied minors that got jammed up and stuck. And these are people who are like literally fleeing for their lives, fleeing violence, fleeing all sorts of circumstances that were just really unspeakable. And I don't want to start to get into any of the stories, but what happened was the backlog stuck a bunch of people. So now you had a bunch of unaccompanied minors and a bunch of other people, women with children, infants, toddlers, in Zona Norte in Tijuana, which is, the cartel part right against the border. By the way, I noticed that people in Mexico don't really use that word cartel. They say criminal organization. I'm not sure why, but so that's the criminal organization part. It's so it was very dangerous. People started getting trafficked. It was literally live streaming people being trafficked on my live stream, and people were getting killed. It was horrible and dehumanizing to the point where, and coming out of the Trump administration, vilification of migrants, and the mayor of Tijuana jumping on board with his "Make America Great Again" hat, and what happened, and the American mainstream media like just pumping out like the completely unexamined misinformation about who was there and criminals and all that stuff. And so what happened was it created a very bad situation to the point where people were actually just being like murdered and trafficked in Tijuana. And so that's thanks to Donald Trump and Stephen Miller. What show did you take to Italy after Philly? You were in Italy, right?
Yeah, La Caravana. La
La
Caravana.
Caravana. Which was that a new series or did it include photos from others?
No, it was just the migrant caravan. I followed the caravan, all the trajectory. So that was over 2,000 miles of
Hmm.
walking with them. I started in Tapachula, and then we ended up in Tijuana. Um, so
Tapachula to TJ.
yeah, so the basically the Mexican territory. I walked with them. So that was the show.
You know, because I've done that and been on those buses and walked with people through Mexico, I know like that it is not easy. And people who are coming all the way from Honduras and Guatemala and El Salvador, just the level of resilience and strength. And I mean, after 3 days on a bus, I was just like ready to like go to the Marriott. And that's a stupid joke, but it's very taxing physically. It's very dangerous. And how was that for you? Did you feel safe because you were with them? Did you
Yeah,
feel?
yeah,
Yeah,
completely.
tell me about it, a little bit about it.
The only time I got like worried was when a police officer stopped me, and he it was at that nighttime. We were with the buses, and it was what, remember those buses went like around 2 o'clock in the morning. They went all night, and the police stopped me in one of the checkpoints, and he was going through all my stuff and whatever, and that made me a little bit uncomfortable. I'm more scared of the police because they're so corrupt than what I am of other dangers, or like the migrants actually help you. They keep you safe.
Hmm.
They will make sure nothing happens to you. They've been great to me, but I'm scared more of the police.
Right. You know, I'm a middle-aged white man, and I had the exact same experience where it was like once I was with them, I was just with them. And so it gave me the ability, you know, as a journalist, as a live streamer, a VJ, to really be there and like just try to, you know, give anybody who's interested to understand or see what's going on a channel to do that. So, and so you've been doing this for a long, long time. Your work is amazing. When I talk to people who have seen your stuff and hear your story and begin to understand who you are, they're always immediately interested to know what she's doing next. What's she doing next? I know you also have just became somebody who's going to be published as, I mean, I don't know if you're published as a writer before, but that's a new part of your of what you're going to be bringing. So let's talk about you as a writer because you know your experience is so rich and you have so much to share. How has it been for you as a writer writing your first piece? And I'll follow up on this later when this is published and blasted out there. I would say the name of the publication, but I think there might be a name change. It's a new launch. So tell me about how's it been for you as a writer?
Uh, Beautiful and frustrating.
Hmm.
I guess those both and frustrating. Trying to, how do I not say too much because then I get repetitive, but say enough to touch people's heart.
Exactly. So I know you have a busy day, and I want to do this a bunch of other times as you like get into your, you know, the tuna projects you're doing or any shows or whatever's happening, and whatever you're putting out there in this in the middle of the pandemic. I really want to just stay current with you, and so, but I want to ask you. So today is actually a very big day because it's your daughter's quinceañera, right? What's the plans? What's going to happen?
Uh, well, we're gonna have a family celebration and just cake and stuff like that in the house. It's not quinceañera, it's the sweet 16. She's 16.
Oh, oh, okay, okay,
And I'm writing in the chat my Instagram right now.
okay.
It's Ada Trillo Photography.
So just while we're here, so you can find Ada at her website, adatrio.com, of course, but she wants everybody to kind of focus on her Instagram for the moment. So Ada Trio, it's Ada Trio at photography
No,
or Ada
it's
Trio.
Ada Trillo Photography. Oh shit. So sorry, shouldn't say that.
It's all right.
Uh,
We're on apps.
okay.
There it is. Ada Trio Photography on Instagram. Like, follow her, find her, watch what she's doing. Her work is amazing. Her commitment and her history and her ability to access subjects. She's doing work. with a short lens that you don't see from anybody with long lenses because it's intimate, it's real. She's part of these communities, this community, this migrant community, and that's what comes through in her photography and her work. So, is there anything else you want to say before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I did a small series on the Black Lives Matter movement and protest in Philadelphia because
Hmm.
there's where I live, and also because I have close ties to the African American community, and I felt their pain. And the pictures are very moving and very strong. So I have them in Instagram and also in my website if you wanna check them out. All my work is dedicated. My art practice is dedicated for social justice, and to try to make the world better, in with my little grain of salt. So thank you.
Ada, thank you so much. We'll catch up with you soon and see what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye bye. Whoa, I'm still broadcasting. There you go. Ada Trio Photography on Instagram, audatrio.com. And, follow her. She's got a bunch of stuff coming up that she's holding close because she doesn't want to talk about it, but she told me about it. So keep your eye on Ada. She's got some fascinating stuff coming up. Her work is beautiful. It's all from the heart. So I'll be blasting everything that she's doing on social media and here on Habs.